Audio is good. Get the video. Yeah, video is good too. All right. Pardon my lighting. Turn off the waiting room if that's on. There we go. Okay. And we'll just watch for people to join. Going on mute. Hey, Luke. How are you?
Mr. Chad, how you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. We're getting into the cold season.
Do you have hot mold cider ready to go?
I got tea. Close enough.
Close enough. I kind of tired, so I'm not probably going to be able to stay for this whole thing because I'm just going to collapse.
Oh yeah, I'm right there with you. I was up at 5:30 for um was it the Drop Times town hall. Uh
Wait, what was that? What was that?
it was at 8 o'clock India time at night. But that's
Yeah,
6:30 in the morning here. So
in daylight savings.
yeah.
It's more humane. I during standard time, it's kind of nice because you just swap the AM and PM and you get India time
Yeah.
from Pacific time.
But they're also half an hour off.
I
So
know, but you get to blow
there's
that
that.
off. It's close enough, right? You just switch it and you're within range.
And they may do something for other time zones at some point as well, because they seemed a little bit sensitive. It was just like a State of the Union sort of thing for their organization. So it wasn't really more than that. And, folks just asking them questions about how they handle things.
Oh, it was Ben Peter Matthew on
Yep,
it. Uh,
that's right.
I
Hey,
I
Peter.
I just throw out male first names until we get his full name in there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Ben's a good guy. and I've met maybe a handful of other folks. I think from
You
there,
must know a
but
Noop, right?
yeah, yeah, I think I met him in Seattle for the first time. I think
Yeah, in Seattle
DrupalCon.
in 2019.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A while ago. I missed a few DrupalCons. The last DrupalCon I did was in Portland.
I, I'm bitter that for various reasons I kept missing the West Coast DrupalCons. I missed Seattle, I missed LA.
Oh, LA was great.
I'll
That was
bet.
really good.
No, it was. I had a contract I was working, and they were like totally busy, and then
Uh,
they like laid me off like the week of the LA
uh,
DrupalCon when it was too late to like put together something. So
yeah, that would have been a crunch and expensive last minute like that. But
no, I've got a million friends in LA. I would just couch crashed. So
okay, yeah. Well, at least the tickets would have been expensive, but
no, I have ways of getting past that too.
yeah. All right, all right. Sneak in the door. Now you just have yourself to blame.
Yeah, I've never paid for a DrupalCon.
I I I don't think I ever have either, and that's not for lack of interest. It's just I would volunteer or
Yeah,
I would have
right.
a company pay for it. So I guess I'd
Those
pay for
are
it in that way, but
right. Those are my two most common choices. But I also actually for DrupalCon Lil begged a ticket off of Twitter.
nice.
And were amazing, answered my call and gave me a ticket. So
Well, that's good. At least somebody's showing up.
wow.
Yeah, I don't know the next time I'm going to go, to be honest. At this point, I've basically said that that Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit was probably going to be my last trip to the US for the next few years.
Well, I don't know. We'll clean things up. We're starting that process.
See how it goes. But yeah,
Uh,
I mean, it's just the reluctance in general, just to even bother with that. We're up for our Canadian citizenship in a couple of months, so
no.
got to go do the test and a lot. It's an eligibility thing. Like you have to hit 1,095 days,
Really?
and before you get permanent residency, like you have a work permit or something like that, every day is a half day. So I had to like do a calculator based on like every time I leave to go out of country, like I went to Mexico, I went to United States a few times, and I have to log all of those instances. So that way I submit that with my application.
Have we met Peter? I'm not sure if we have. I've got a terrible memory for everything. So don't be
Uh,
insulted if we've met like a million times and I don't remember.
yes, I believe we met, but very little. I only go to like very local events in Bay
Yeah.
Area. So probably few, but I do remember we've met.
And where'd you
Local
say
to
you were?
where are you? Yeah.
Um, so I went to one of my first web camps in Palo Alto at Stanford, and
Okay.
Oh.
recently to one of my second Bay Area Drupal camps. I
Oh.
was um, I was surprised that they held the second one again in Oakland, but it was very cool since I recognized the place already. But it was pretty fun going there. I also got a chance to volunteer my first time, which was pretty cool.
That is good.
Like insider look for everything.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
All right.
Hey,
Amber,
Amber.
I didn't get to meet you in at the summit.
I know I could only be there on Saturday. And so I just missed out on so many conversations with people. I was like, oh, I miss you, I miss you, I miss you. And then it was just so busy and then it was over for me. So
Oh,
yeah.
you weren't there on Sunday.
Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I had a couple of music classes that I take on Sunday morning and
Oh,
I would have had my accordion and it just would have been like a huge hassle to like yeah, because I live over on the west side, so it just didn't work out. So, but I was glad I could be there at least on Saturday.
Yeah, it was good seeing you, and your presentation was really nice too.
Oh, thank you. I was a bit nervous about it because I don't usually do human talks.
I,
You
I
know?
I think we all need a little bit more of those right now.
Yeah, yeah. So
But
no, I was glad with how it went. So
yeah,
good.
well, I think I'm going to give it a little bit more time, but that is something that I do want to talk about today is the summit.
Cool.
Not so much a retrospective, but more like next year.
Yeah.
I think that'll be good.
Like in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, so I guess just kind of the lead up is when we were in Portland, Ryan said, let's all just powwow about the like, what are we going to do next year? We could do it in Upper Washington, maybe like north of Seattle, closer to the
Mm-hmm.
border. And I get that, you're outside of a city area. It might be more fun for folks. It might still be accessible, but then again, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, and the other idea was to do something more than just Drupal. So to perhaps open it up a little bit to other open source web technologies. And I think that may actually be the thing that gets a lot of traction in the current market. Um, so that's kind of where we left things
Yeah.
off. Ryan said if we are going to do it in Vancouver, he certainly understand that. It's been since 2017 since it was
Wow.
in Vancouver. And I actually went to that one. That was the first time that my wife and I went to BC ever.
I think
Um,
I did too.
it was a good
I
one.
think I'm pretty sure I was there.
It was at the conference center downtown on the water. It was pretty cool.
I was definitely in Vancouver for something. Can't think of what else it would have been. Must have been that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah,
Drupal
and
camp,
traditionally it rotates.
yeah. Well, makes sense. And are you guys familiar with Drupal camp Chattanooga? I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I know the name.
yeah, I've met the people that organize that. Cool, great guys, and they rebranded their camp this year, which I think
Okay.
was like it just happened or it's happening soon, to an open source camp. So it might be something to connect with the organizers there after the fact and see how it
Like
went.
growing pains sort of thing.
Well, and just see how it was received, and how that went. I don't know. Like it might be
Yeah.
worth like reaching out to them. I'm not sure. Let me look up when it is or was. It's and I can't even remember the name right now, but they're just calling it open source camp. And open source camp Chattanooga 2025 November. Oh, this weekend, like
Yeah.
November 7th and 8th. So
And
just in 2 days. And it's about the size of the summit, like 60 attendees or so.
what did you call?
If
What did they change the name to? I'm just taking notes.
Well, if you just Google or look up Drupal Camp Chattanooga, it's the same domain.
Okay.
It'll
Yeah.
take you, but they've updated the name of it to Open Source
Open
Camp.
source camp. Okay.
But it's
Open source
still
camp.
like the domain
Chattanooga.
name is
Okay.
still what it was. So they say we have a full day training on open source technologies for Laravel, WordPress, and Drupal. So they have a training day on Friday and then the main camp on Saturday. Um, they have like a beginner's guide to Drupal, WordPress in a day, and introduction to Laravel. So that's kind of cool to have like introductory trainings for each of those technologies.
Yeah, because you're still tapping into the same audience. And I talked
Mm-hmm.
to Mac from Affinity Bridge about some of this earlier today, and he says, one thing as you open it up that runs the risk is now everybody has the idea of well, now it's all over the place and you kind of lose a sense of like who your audience is. So I think, the content strategist or UX mentality of like define your audience, define, the scope of what you want this camp to try to be, and then reach out to the people who can support you out, especially outside of Drupal. So I think what you're
Yeah,
talking about here with the format still being Drupal and Drupal adjacent things, Laravel's definitely Drupal adjacent. WordPress is arguably a competitor, but it's also what a lot of agencies use in conjunction with Drupal. So it's still PHP based. So
it's kind of addressing like just recognizing the reality that web development agencies are using different, they're diversifying.
yeah,
There's a lot
yeah,
of, Drupal agencies or agencies that they'll propose Drupal or WordPress or Laravel, just depends on, and they're just, instead of just being exclusive
yeah.
with one stack because it's just not economically viable,
I
So
think
you're still
maybe,
reaching an audience, like, but you're recognizing that these agencies, and these developers, they're using multiple technologies or they need to learn multiple ones to stay
yeah,
afloat.
I think staying adjacent makes sense. Um, I think maybe putting some guardrails up to say, okay, we're going to limit it not to dive into Ruby or Python, because I feel like there's that slippery slope of like, okay,
Yeah,
what about Django? Are you going to talk about that?
that
I
makes
don't know,
sense. Yeah.
but I still think that there's a place for things like React, Angular, Vue, perhaps in that conversation, since that's more like the adjacent language. Everybody has a sense of
Yeah.
JavaScript at least.
Well, I think maybe the overall message is just that a lot of what used to be web development has become front end development, right? Like with the ascension of the JavaScript ecosystem to a greater and greater extent, things that you used to have to like pick a platform to do, and you choose, Drupal is one of your options, and that's where you build the site. It's now becoming more and more like the data store,
Hmm.
and Drupal's being pushed into being the database,
Yeah,
which
I can. I actually started my
I'm
career as
not
a.
happy about it, but I think that's might be what's going on, right?
I don't think you're wrong. I think we started down this path with the like get off the Drupal island and decoupled or headless Drupal. Like we kind of made the bed, so to speak. But I also, I used to be a database administrator, programmer. I'm more a backend programmer than front end. So that's why a lot of these more front end things just I don't really work with them that much. If I did, I'd probably be using AI the whole time. And I think there are probably some people similar to me who are still very committed to things like Drupal because it just does a lot out of the box for you in terms of giving you structure and backend interfaces. So to your point, a lot of people still may continue to use Drupal as something that gives you nice interfaces for content creation, but then put some sort of a front end on top of that for your page templating and styling and all the other automation that you might need. And we already see that at DrupalCon. We already see like talks that are covering both of these spaces. So I don't think it's too much of a pivot, really.
Oh, I wanted Amber. You just muted yourself. No. I want to hear what like because with Drupal Eyes Me, you would have been seeing
Well,
the
are you talking? Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not. A lot of people are doing decoupled applications and are doing front end applications with Drupal as the API, developing the API on that. We get a lot of people who want to learn about that, and it also um, makes it possible for front end developers who don't know Drupal to participate in developing a a site that uses Drupal in whatever way to work on it. And also, so does like single directory components, which isn't decoupled or anything. So, and then with Canvas now, formerly known as Experience
Yeah.
Builder.
Right. Right.
So I
Right.
think that's going to even open more doors for front end developers, regardless. Like they don't need to know Drupal or the theming layer in the same way that you did, I don't know, I don't
It's almost like a
10
recoupling.
years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So the point being that like web development, regardless of like if you're using Drupal, like let's say you're using Drupal for like the data modeling and all of that. And but depending on how it's set up and architected, and you could have specialists from any number of, you know, front end engineers with a variety of different, skill sets participate without needing to know Drupal data modeling, or Drupal APIs necessarily. And so that kind of, because there's a diverse group of people that are working for these agencies, what type of s- education needs they would they be looking for at a conference? Like, okay, I'm working for a Drupal agency. My coworkers are going to the summit. What what do I need to? What am I interested? What should be offered? What would be appealing to me? I don't know. This is all off the cuff, but
well, yeah,
I
yeah.
just want to kind of tie it back to like
I mean,
what would be an attractive schedule? What would be attractive topics for an open source summit or a Drupal summit? That it doesn't have to be limited to this Drupal island, it can be a number of different kinds of things.
I think maybe learning a little bit from what you were saying about Chattanooga, literally just about to go through this, maybe doing a little debrief with them after they have this,
Yeah.
because we're not really forming like a planning committee for this until December.
Okay.
Um, well, that's funny. There's a video of Ryan Price on the page for the Chattanooga one.
okay.
Um, so I think maybe chatting with them to figure out like lessons learned, like how did you do that? Not to necessarily carbon copy it, but really learn quite a bit from it. I think that makes sense.
All right. I was in the mood for a more philosophical thing, but maybe I shouldn't hijack this particular conversation for that. I mean, look, I'm a million years old, and so I started building websites in 1993 when the beta versions of Mosaic came out, and I remember in like 1995 they started to have internet worlds, and that went on for about 5 years. I think maybe the last internet world was in like 99 maybe, and after that like it splintered out, but like for a while all the internet things, like I remember when like Java was introduced and when Flash was introduced, and like this was all, it was all sort of like front endy, right? and 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 at the time I would build my own content management systems. I would, that's how I discovered PHP and Cold Fusion and all sorts of things like that. And then finally, like I saw WordPress and beginning things like that. And when I saw Drupal, I was like, oh, this is great. This like takes care of a lot of the crap that I've been doing for like all along the way. I'm like, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. It comes with a built-in like password recovery system, like just out of the box. I'm good. I'll just you know get like a website that does nothing, and then I can build up my own things on top of it. And so I got heavily involved in Drupal, but every so often I'll like find myself outside of it, and I'm astonished at how there's this huge world that works under entirely different rules, and I don't understand it, and I want to understand it. Like 2 weeks ago, I was at a thing called SF Tech Week, and it was really huge. It was really like there were hundreds of companies doing mostly like AI things and web things and technology things. And I went to all sorts of things with like, crowded rooms full of people like me, and nobody had heard of Drupal, or like nobody was like cognizant of it. Like they didn't care. It really just didn't enter their life at all. And yet they seem to be doing the same kinds of things that I'm doing. So this kind of freaks me out, right? Like finding out like there's, you know, I feel like it's invasion of the body snatchers where everyone else has been like usurped, and like there's no longer humans. There's no longer the, you know, website building Drupal and WordPress humans. Like 90% of the population are these other like React creatures that do things in ways that I don't understand.
Eric, welcome. What are your thoughts?
Hey, I don't know. It's I think as we're talking about opening it up to be more than the Drupal Summit, making
Yeah,
it like a
yeah.
web summit thing, and that Stanford WebCamp did this a while ago, and because of its history as a Drupal camp, um, the sessions are typically Drupal focused, but then there's a lot of other things that come in, even at Drupal camps, there's things I feel like people forget about that go hand in hand with Drupal. Like there aren't usually a lot of PHP talks. There aren't usually a lot of CSS talk. Well, there was, I guess there was that one recently, but we're talking about Apache or Nginx or FrankenPHP, all the different pieces that make Drupal what it is. Um, so even calling it like Drupal camp, but just encouraging more topics than have to do with Drupal and saying that that's um, okay. I think it's a good idea. Trying to extend reach, especially what's going on with Drupal right now, is how everybody's, you go into any of these meetings and people are like, I'm 1,000 years old, and there's no new people coming in. That's the big thing right now that everybody's trying to figure out how do we get these new guys in here or new people in here to take over maintaining these 1,000 modules and everything. Because if we all go away, Drupal's dead. You know?
Yeah. I I reached out to a lot of people. Eric, you know this, but I think some of the folks on this call don't. As my commitment to try to see if the summit can go to Vancouver, I told Ryan, he gave me a deadline of December 1st. Connect with whoever you can in the BC area, see if there's interest. That's it. Just is there interest? No commitment for sponsorships, no commitment to speakers or even a format. Just is there interest in Vancouver to do that sort of thing? And I reached out to, I want to say about a dozen agencies in the area. I didn't even know there were that many that claim to use Drupal in this area. So um, my naivety. And also, I wanted to reach out to non-agencies because I think it's really important to include non-agencies in this, and that's where I think I'm going to need a lot more help, not just in the BC area. Once we start to get traction with this, is we form a planning committee and then we really start to um, market this thing, whatever this thing is, and I think we still need to define this thing probably in a planning committee in December. But I think we got the answer that we were looking for. Is there interest? And the answer was yes. And there was also a yes, but. The yes, but was maybe the agency no longer does Drupal or they don't exclusively do Drupal. So I feel like
Mm,
that was the kind of the nudge that we needed from some of these organizations. One, I think it's called Major Tom, is an agency based out of Vancouver. They only do WordPress. They're like, yeah, maybe some of our developers are interested in Drupal, but that's not what we do. And I said,
hmm
well, funny thing, we're considering doing something beyond that. I talked to Mac, uh, the CEO from Affinity Bridge here in Vancouver. I talked to him this morning on the phone for a little while about it, and he says that the people he knows, some of them will use Drupal, for sure, especially if it's the right solution. But they have broadened their horizon. As we all know, this is just becoming quite a trend. So we would get a lot more attention from those groups if we included that. But he cautioned not to make it so broad stroke that we almost become vague. So having some sort of sense of structure. So again, I think Eric, your experience with Stanford Web Camp and the Chattanooga shift, I think these are both some lessons that we can learn about a format shift, which isn't so much like a major shift, but just a Drupal end and kind of extending on that and what that picture might look like for this. People are going to be familiar with Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit as a brand.
Mhm.
So maybe it's Pacific Northwest Open Summit or Web Summit. I know that
Yeah,
Ryan was juggling ideas for that.
I mean, the name is already so long that
Yeah.
it would be perfect if you could just say something like Drupal and Web Summit,
Yeah.
right? Or Drupal and Web Technology Summit or something like that. But then that kind of makes it very long.
Yeah. And I know the region, the PNW label may make sense to be present. Either way, we still have a website. I still think that it's important to keep that active, and that can just simply, like Chattanooga, be an initial rebrand for the first year, if that's something that we want to pilot test. Canopy chimed in. They already said, yeah, we're planning our sponsorship. Your timing couldn't be any better. And I'm like, I'm not even asking for sponsorship, but yeah,
Mhm.
Allison already reached out and said that they would sponsor whatever it is, if it's in Vancouver or otherwise. So at least we
Yeah.
have some commitments in that regard. But I think that indicates something else. If we expand past Drupal, we may get both attendee and sponsorships that we otherwise wouldn't have had
Mhm.
access to. I don't know what that does for attendee potential size or what venues we want to look at. I know one person or a few people said doing it at UBC would be really great. And I think a few times it's been at a school and that can be advantageous. But there's also that question of, is it during the weekdays or is it on the weekend? So the venue might dictate that.
I want to go back to this idea of who kind of expanding the idea or just looking at the reality of the types of roles and skills, the types of people that can be involved on a Drupal project. And that this whole idea of the kind of, the Drupal expert who can do it all is one thing, and it's kind of a traditional role, and that's great. And but there's so many other types of people now and with different abilities and skills that can participate in Drupal, especially as it's being developed, and like the JSON API stuff and the decoupled stuff has been around for a long time. So people who are developing APIs and are using web services and who are, building Node JS, and like that's all really kind of coming around with MCPs and AI and all of that is, and then there's the opportunities that Drupal Canvas opens up to. And I'm wondering specifically about this idea of um, attracting students and younger people. And so I wonder, like, like I don't know how you would market this exactly yet, but just the whole idea of like you're learning computers, you're learning programming, you're learning coding, you're learning JavaScript, you're learning React, you're learning whatever AI, and you have a place in the Drupal community. You could have a
Mhm.
place, and the Drupal, just presenting this idea of kind of the open arms of the community, and that it's not just for Drupal nerds who are just these, the webmaster extraordinaire, um, but just the reality of this like really diverse ecosystem that that we have, and that is possible. And so what if the program really reflected that? Like, so you're a React developer, so here's what you can do in Drupal. So you're um an API, you're building mobile apps, here's what you can do with Drupal. I don't know. Like it's just
Hmm.
this that I don't know. I haven't, but just I wonder if someone can look at the kind of computer science offerings at UBC and maybe reach out to instructors over there to see, like, to have a conversation about that, and it's like, is there a way to make this attractive to students? And at least, s- it doesn't have to be, I'm not suggesting that the summit be all students, but just like, is there a way to kind of make it attractive enough to students to come and to help build, fulfill this mission of building the community. I'm thinking specifically, did any of you guys watch the Dries Note? And I'm at and the, and I can't remember the particulars, but he talked about working with this student who on a demo, and I loved the case study, and like he wrote up this whole tutorial about how to do it. And I can't remember exactly all the details, but I just was like so encouraged by that. Like, oh, yay. Someone, a young person likes Drupal, like was able, it was just so encouraging. And it was like someone was like really captivated by this idea enough to like make it a part of their student project and write up documentation and a tutorial and to work on it. And it was just like really exciting for them. And I'm like, I love this. Can we have more of this? Can we have more talks like this? Can we have more? Um, can this be, instead of just like, okay, I'm an old timer and we're gonna learn form API, which is very important, but like also for the people who are the people that are out there experimenting with tech in various ways, whether it's AI or JavaScript or what APIs or whatever, mobile apps or whatever, like, do they even know that they could have a place in our wonderful community, you know?
But I think you're absolutely right about the audience pretty much being the same. You're going to have project managers, designers, front end developers, back end developers, but then it extends into but for what technology? Um, so then you kind of so the audience segments seem to stay the same, but your point about, well, we need to attract the younger generation. Um, Carlos and Mike Anello have been beating that drum really hard,
I
and
think I might have a good opinion on this.
yeah,
I think it could be maybe better if you appeal to people more around website development. Because then to me, as a concept, it makes more sense. Like I know what it is right away. But if someone hears something like more niche, like WordPress or Drupal, they have to first figure out what it means before they actually decide they want to do it. But
Hmm.
if they're already working with web development, then it's like a easy bridge to then start doing Drupal right after because they're already inside it at a more broader sense. Uh,
Yeah.
So, so do young people still care about web development? I mean, for me, when I started this new thing, like filled with possibilities and like this whole revolution. But I started doing this 10 years before a lot of them were born. Like what still seems like, cool, nifty technology probably is like ham radios to them, right? Like, or
so I think it's mostly around the concept of like starting it more broad, and then kind of narrowing it down once they're already inside it. Um, I think right now, like a lot of students are really into AI since it's like all over the news, but that can actually be a good bridge to web development. If you can say like you can combine AI with websites, then they're already like into AI. So then they can just say, oh, I can combine it. Like if there's combined programs between the two concepts, that could be
and
like a good bridge to it.
and we've already seen quite a bit of that in the past few years. We've clearly embraced it in the Drupal community. I have no visibility on the WordPress community and their embracing or not embracing of AI.
I love this, Peter. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the objective of this conversation to figure out how to get people interested in Drupal?
Well, Keegan, we
Hi,
were
Keegan.
hi. We were talking in general about getting the summit to Vancouver and confirming whether or not that made sense. Hot on the heels of Portland. Uh, you missed the part earlier, and that's totally fine. About I reached out to several people, organizations in BC, especially both agencies and non-agencies, and the reception was very positive. There's a lot of interest. Uh, Ryan had already mentioned the idea of maybe expanding it beyond Drupal. Um,
Yeah.
how we brand that, how we pivot that, how we put any sort of story behind that is still something that we're playing out, and I don't think that we are going to walk away today knowing that answer. Um, but Eric pointed out, Stanford Web Camp has already done that. Amber pointed out Chattanooga just did that, and they're having a camp like present tense right now. So I think learning some lessons about how do you manage the scope of this thing? How do you attract people through marketing to this thing, especially if they already know Drupal, but you're also adding to the audience people who might be in WordPress or do Laravel. So I think we're trying to navigate these waters a little bit, but also not get so broad that it's like literally anything that you want to do on the web, come to our camp, and then nobody shows up because they have no idea what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So that's the catch up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. Just from listening to what you were saying, it's a little bit of a different topic, and I don't want to veer into it, but it's relevant to just like getting people interested in Drupal. My coworker owner at Agaric, Lewis, his father, Jeff Elkner, is a teacher in Arlington, Virginia, who has basically been teaching like programming for a long time now. I think he's like around retirement age right now, but and I don't remember if he already retired actually, but he's been teaching Drupal, not Drupal. He's been teaching programming and has been trying to integrate Drupal into his like programming courses because he's been trying to teach kids about free software and like the values behind free software basically like as a part of learning about programming which I think is like one of the coolest things. He teaches kids like look, I've got like a de-googled phone. It's awesome, right? It's really cool. I'm way into that kind of thing. So that's actually how I met Lewis in the first place was through his dad. I was connected with him through that. But anyway, that his program of trying to teach kids about Drupal and also about like running a business, and as a running a cooperative business, it's really neat to see teachers at a high school age try to integrate you know wholesome ideas into, because it's really like anarchist schooling, right? It's kind of just like just give the people the thing that they need to learn and let them mess with it, right? And obviously Drupal is tough and to get into, especially when you don't have uh, someone who actually knows Drupal there. And I think he got a little in over his head there, but I still think that it's one of the coolest ideas of like one really cool way to get people to like learn Drupal. And Drupal is such a good candidate for this, is to have, like a Drupal site for the school and have different people in the school be using it to publish articles about like, here's like what the basketball team did. Here's, like what other people, just like actually use it as like a school website and get kids involved in like the maintenance of it, get kids involved in publishing, just like how to add new features to it. Like there's so many different ways that people can interact with that. And in this age, it makes so much sense to have something that everyone can like participate in like that. And I don't know, I just think that's like something that I've been wanting to see like for years now. I think it would be so cool. And anyway, that's just a conversation that I want to have at a later point. But I do think it's a good conversation to be like kind of having, while we're because that could be a session, right? That could be a cool, like, here's something that we could do as a Drupal community. How do we support this? You know, anyway, just thematic anyway. So thanks for listening.
That that's really not only a good story, but also a good nudge in the right direction. I could definitely see a situation where you have similar to contrib days or training days, like a full day where you have. I'm sure we've all been like in a physics class where you gathered together as a group and you do an experiment together. Those group exercises and building a website as a group kind of lets you do a little bit of role play. Somebody's a back end developer, somebody's a front end developer, somebody's more on the DevOps side of things, somebody's the project manager. Um, I'm not dictating. I'm just
Yeah,
saying that it's a really good idea. But I think you are also I think all of you are touching on a thing that we've probably observed a number of times with students. And I think Amber, you're touching on this like, but let's check, let's see what these students are actually doing. I think a lot of students encounter Drupal because their universities or in some cases high schools use Drupal, and they might participate in the maintenance of it, or whether it's help with the content or even deeper, like help support the site, fix it,
yeah,
add features,
Mm.
upgrade the stuff.
I think you're touching on an interesting point, Keegan, about affordability and accessibility of technology for a student. And I was just thinking back, and that was just the thing as a 20 something, the thing that I was most concerned about was I need a better job, a better paying job. I'm tired of making copies and answering phones, and I want what is the pathway and what is something accessible that I can learn for free. And it was HTML and CSS, right?
yeah,
And so there's huge appeal in these open source tools that, we're mature, we've all grown up, we've been doing this for 25 years or more, or give or take, and we're kind of forgetting just like how hungry we were, you know, and the value, the incredible value of free and open source software is it's free and open source and accessible, and you can get in there and you can figure it out, and there's no barriers, and you could do it for free. You can, well, you not, you need equipment and so forth, but the software in this age of everything's a subscription, everything is, and uh, you know, we sh- I don't quote me on this, but like the affordable web summit, like, can we incorporate affordability? Just like the whole idea of like um I mean, that's a real thing. Like accessible, affordable technology that you can learn and you can get in there and you can learn everything that you want about it. And you can build cool things. You can build things for your school. You can build things for your club. You can build websites for whatever it is your interests are. And that can put you on a career pathway to get a job as soon as the economy recovers from whatever it is that is happening right now. So,
Well, I think a lot of folks here are talking about something that I learned about earlier this year. I put up my own website to try to support my freelance business. And I worked with a business advisor. My website says, here are my services, here's how much stuff costs, here's how to get in touch with me. This pretty standard stuff that you would expect to have on a website. And he says, Chad, this says a lot about you, but it doesn't say a lot about your customer. And there's a book that he recommended, which I still have yet to read, but he explained it to me, called Story Brand. And the idea was to think, instead of talking about the narrative of myself, and talk more about the narrative of my audience, my customer. And that suddenly like fired so many things off in my head. But to apply that to this, we're not talking about Drupal. And I think all of you have said this in different ways. We're talking about the student who's trying to learn to build websites, or the already existing developer who's trying to make a slight shift in their career. Maybe they know Drupal, but they don't know WordPress, and where do I start? And
mhm.
commingling at a camp may give them the opportunity. But I think telling that story helps us really develop the format of this thing and understand our audience a little bit more intimately.
Yeah, not using language that like requires you to know something, you
Yeah.
know. So like making it broad, that's something that I sort of like about the open source summit idea that Drupal Camp Chattanooga, it's like you don't need to know what Drupal is, but like, oh, open source, I have heard of that, or web development. Oh, I've heard of that. Like, yeah, I know what that is. I can hook into that. I mean, did anyone I was just remembering Web Visions. Did anyone go to that? So that was like back in like the late 2000s or something like that. And that's how I learned about the language of a lot of these different technologies. Like I didn't know what I didn't know, but that was a big conference. And we're just talking, we still need to, we're still, the summit is still small, has a small enough audience that we need to be, I think someone
Specific.
already said this, we need to be targeted enough to attract an audience, not vague, but also in yeah, not be so exclusive as to exclude people that might otherwise benefit from showing up. I don't know, this is
No, that's
magic
good.
somehow.
Attract new faces and also attract the frequent flyers that we've had.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the challenge. Well, I think we have something to work with here. I'll run with things with Ryan and Heather and some of the other folks. I know that Heather needs a break
yeah.
from doing things.
Hmm.
I'll do what I can to take point um, where I can, and I'll probably need a buttload of help when it comes to just figuring out how to solicit and pull in advertisers and sponsors and whatnot. Um, this is really good. I think there was another topic that I wrote down here. Oh yeah, virtual camp ideas. So this is really adjacent to this, and we've grazed against this a few times during this meetup. But since there's some new faces here, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are about a virtual camp, because especially something that we could do DIY for low or no money. Like that's the kind of punk attitude that I'm trying to personally bring to this. I don't know if that's feasible or attractive to would-be attendees, but lots of a virtual camp.
I mean, I'm doing one tomorrow, and I've done it, many times for the bad camp. Bad camp. I always mix them up. The backdrop.
Oh yeah.
Same number of syllables, starts with the same letter, a lot of same people. So I get confused there. But Backdrop Live is tomorrow. I'm actually
Yeah.
doing a session in it. So we do them 3 times a year for the last 10 years. And I mean, it works, but it's just like a different thing. It's not really a substitute for an actual in-person meet people camp. It's you're sitting in your home office looking at people on video screens. Not quite as cool.
Yeah. It's
Definitely kind
more,
of a different thing.
it's fun though. It's more of like an unconference sort of conversational thing that can spark lots of ideas and information, I think. It's pretty cool. If anybody hasn't gone,
Well,
I
there,
suggest if you have time tomorrow, yeah.
I
yeah.
think I think it's totally fair to say that it's not a replacement for an in-person meeting.
Mm,
It is a supplement, and that's fine. It being that. Obviously the downsides of there are the few downsides are just like, yeah, you're not getting to as intimate of an experience with the people, and then also there's always the possibility of getting Zoom bombed, which is like the worst, but like, you know,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I've heard a few other folks have some really strong points about a virtual camp that differs from in person, where it's like if I'm going to a session or if I'm flying to a place, staying in a hotel, I have a different level of investment than if I'm going
Mm,
to a Zoom call where people just kind of have it on in the background, they tune out. So there's less engagement. And that begs the question about the format of sessions. So some of the ideas that might help mitigate that would be pre-recorded sessions. So a couple weeks prior to a virtual camp, you release recordings of presentations that people have, and then really the main focus of the camp is to provide rooms for people to meet and discuss those presentations. Or if there was no presentation, like birds of a feather sort of thing, you just pick a topic and you show up. That's real loose. And I think marketing that then is the greater risk of things. But I also see the challenge of trying to run something that's virtual. I remember DrupalCon during COVID was quite an abruptly different experience than being in person, doing that one virtual one. And that was huge. So I don't necessarily think of it as ambitious as that. But if anything, I'm just thinking of it as an extension of what we're trying to do here in these meetups, but just being more formal and having like breakout rooms or something like that.
I think it can work um, in an established community, especially. Um, so, for example, Write the Docs. I went to a virtual, like during the pandemic, they had a virtual conference, and they would do pre-recorded sessions, but so everything was smooth in terms of like the programming and the delivery, right? So they had a live introduction, and then they showed the recording, and then it was all about the chat, right? And so the back channel and the conversation happening during the talk, and also the speaker could participate in that, which was cool. And so as the talk was being delivered, everyone can be interacting um, in the chat. And then there were breakout rooms for people seeking jobs or to interact with vendors. So there was kind of a virtual booth environment as well. So I thought that, but also that conference and the people that run Write the Docs, they just have excellent organizing skills. Like it's a lot of work, and I think it can work really well. I think that what I've heard in the past regarding like the Portland meetup is, it's just we just have a social meetup now. Like we don't have talks or anything. And I've heard in the past that like people would show up if there was information, you know. And so I think that there is a need for kind of people are interested in staying up to date with best practices just in general. And that's kind of a hard thing to do. And it's nice to be able to have an event where you're like, okay, I'm taking this time, I'm blocking this time off to get caught up, and a virtual conference, like even like I haven't been to Backdrop Live or anything, but a periodic thing that's like a day of talks, you know, for and there's no hotel or other extra expenses. It's really accessible and it's informal. And like the whole point is just to, get some information and connect with people. It doesn't replace, I don't see it really replacing the summit. But I think it could serve a purpose in our community, in the regional community.
Yeah,
So.
and I think that's what we were thinking about is not so much as a replacement, but rather supplemental, especially for folks who are so remote or have one of the
Mhm.
many accessibility issues that would prevent them from otherwise going in. Which let's be honest, a large accessibility issue for people isn't just the travel; it's the expense,
Yeah.
um, or just the time off.
Mhm.
So I really would love to see something get put together. So I may try to learn a little bit more about this conference that you're talking about. Can you put a link for it if you have one?
For Write the Docs?
Yeah.
Or, well, it's not virtual anymore. Oh,
Okay.
wait, no.
Okay.
Let me think. No, they do. They have a Portland conference that's in March, and then they just had Berlin. And then they do have, uh, I think it's like, it, what do they call it? They do have a virtual conference that's like Eastern time. It's like it spans the time zone of like East Coast US and Western Europe or something like that. So I'll drop a link
Uh,
in
is this
because
it?
they do a great job with their events.
I should I feel like I should interject since I given sort of the downside of maybe online things. I should point out that I'm actually starting up an online thing. I am this next year going to be taking over the San Francisco Drupal users group as an online thing. I'm going to do a monthly just single session. Going to try to reimagine some things, to have some ideas I want to bring to it to sort of give it some value. But I just want to throw that out there to make the point that I'm not giving up on this. Like I'm actually into the remote thing. I don't know about like a full multi-hour, multi-day thing, but you know,
I was thinking something that was more like half days to make it a little bit more approachable for people who do have to work.
yeah,
But similar to this meetup, scheduled for the Pacific time zone. I know there's this like East Coast centric thing.
yeah.
I lived there. I know all about it. Um, but I really want to commit to that. So I think Luke, first off, it's great that you're doing that, and I think that we should all try to partner up on figuring out what that looks like and put together again a committee that taps into a lot of these geographic groups.
Yeah.
Um, so that way there's at least representation from each one of those groups. But the other point that you made is, there's this reluctance that you and many people have expressed about the virtual camp sort of concept. That reluctance is rooted, if we do that little like root cause analysis of asking why 5 times sort of thing, that it's rooted in something that is a challenge that does exist in the virtual space. And I think it's our responsibility to explore that a little bit together as a group, but understand that no matter what, there will be some sort of challenges and that we're not going to solve all the problems, but it's just we're being sensitive to them and taking them into account as best as we possibly can to produce something valuable.
I want to insert one of the things that Backdrop Live has done for years now. That kind of addresses some of the issues of sort of screen burnout. Is it's 3 hours on and 3 hours off. It's divided to blocks. So
Mhm.
it runs over the course of more than 24 hours. But like you're not you you can kind of hors d'oeuvre your way through it. You're not expected to be there for the whole thing. You're not committed, and there's recovery time. There's time to do other things.
Yeah, decompress and recover.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's useful for time zones because then everybody can participate if someone wants to give a talk and they're
yeah.
uh, somewhere else and everything. I think it's a really great format.
Middle of the night in the U.S., we do German language sessions that are
Mhm.
going on, you know, for that audience. So
Right on. Well, I think there's something to that. Maybe over the next few months, getting some ideas down on paper and then forming at least some sort of a committee of people from this area who have already been talking about it might be a good next step there. So I'll look into that. I'll ping some of you folks.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm out of time that I can stay here, so I'm gonna just
okay.
like loudly go away as I
Okay.
back out of the room.
Good
Great
seeing you,
catching up
Luke.
with everybody. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
kind of at the end of my energy too. So it was
okay.
good to see you, all of you. Thank you
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
this on,
Thanks
Chad.
for joining
Appreciate
in.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
See
See
ya.
ya.
So those
I was
those were
gonna
the main
say
things.
Stanford WebCamp has pretty much always done the first day is just straight, just pure virtual, and we get way more attendance in the sessions and everything, and don't we don't really have everybody seems to be fairly focused on what's happening.
So if they
So
bother to attend, they're actually paying attention, engaged in some
yeah,
form.
yeah, it's and it's also during the week, like we've said before, so they're taking time away from something else that they could be doing. So that maybe is why they're
That's the
more
investment.
invested, you know? So,
Yeah, and I think that's good feedback. That helps us kind of navigate this space a little bit more effectively together. Um, I could probably talk about both of those topics for another hour, but do any of you have anything else that you wanted to talk about? Anything burning on your mind? Like a therapy
About the
session.
stuff we're talking about.
About literally anything.
yeah.
Open floor. Let's call it that.
I guess I did want to comment back on the conversation of young people getting involved in programming.
Yeah.
Just I want to share a little bit more of my perspective on that because I personally went through like a coding boot camp. That was how I got into programming.
Mhm.
In like 2019, beginning of 2019. I had never done any programming before 2019. And you know, similar I think Amber was describing, right? Like I need to like figure out how to like put food on my plate kind of thing, you know. That's
hmm
basically the situation I was in. It's just like I have an undergraduate degree. It's not helping me. I don't know how to exist. So anyway, I went to this coding boot camp, and I had it's funny because going into it, I had anticipated that I was going to run into the same problems that I had run into from going through undergrad, right? Basically, like my problems were like I could find jobs, but I didn't want any of the ones that I was finding, or I was like actually just like morally opposed to taking them. And of course, you know, that is like certainly a problem that you run into when like you know certainly I had the same problem, right, going through it, and other, you know, things. I had some luck in the process, but you know, ultimately I don't think that like I hit that like it's not like web development was like inherently the thing that I was going to like find that luck with, right? But it was certainly a strategic move in terms of looking at like what does the economy look like right now? Where are people getting jobs? How can I like afford to live in Boston right now? You know, was where I was at the time. And so anyway, I did go to this boot camp, and I do, you know, it was a good move for me. But you know, I also have like a million critiques of that experience. And on like a especially on like a more macroeconomic level, right? Because I look at that experience and I think like, you know, I like saw a bubble and I jumped in it, you know. I like there was this economic bubble and I was like, I gotta get in there before it pops. and I think and I think now we're at a point where like it kind of has popped, you know, like there's certainly new things growing, but like, you know, it's no secret like people are getting fired left and right by big tech companies. Like, you know, there's fewer and fewer jobs, and there's fewer and fewer entry level jobs. And so, like to the question of like what motivates people to get into this space, I think that the answer to that question, unfortunately, is going to look different, you know, in 2025 than it did in 2018 or 2019. If like for when people who ask me, you know, seriously, like who are asking me about how I got into programming and whether or not they should do it, it's like it's a really hard question to answer, right? Because like the economy and like the role of the jobs available looked really different
hmm
when I made that switch. You know, I took advantage of a moment, and I know so many people that did that. And so, you know, this year I did reach back out to people who are still going to the school that I went to, and I'm like, what does it look like for you all, right? Like, and they were like, it's hard. Like, it is harder than ever to find jobs right now, you know, and um, and that's kind of what I guessed, but I just wasn't sure, right? Because for me, like navigating that space, I think it's different for everyone, you know, like navigating the job market is just different for everyone. For like, I hate navigating the job market. It sucks. It's so awful. It's one of the worst things.
Yeah.
And it's really hard no matter what, and it's especially hard when you are like not willing to, when you are like resistant to making sacrifices, you know. But
Yeah.
anyway, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of that perspective in terms of like what we're aiming for, because I do think that that is a very real challenge that we have right now. It's not just a matter of like, are people interested in this? How do we get people interested? It's like, is this even a smart move for people to transition
Yeah.
in, you know, on the job market? Because Amber and I, you know, both described our story of like, yeah, it was a smart move. It was an obvious smart move to figure out how I can afford to make, how I can make money.
Yeah.
And like, I just think it's so different. It's just changing so rapidly. You know, I don't know what to say about it. So anyway,
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a lot of like career coaching sort of things
yeah.
over my entire career, and you're right, that has changed significantly. Before it used to be really focused on what makes you happy. You know, if you do the thing that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That whole thing, which is a bit of a myth because work is still work. You still have to. I'm not getting paid to go out kayaking or hiking. Or if I am, I'm not getting paid really much at all.
yeah.
Uh, but I guess to your point, when when we first got into tech, and we all have our own story, that
Mhm.
story is inherently different than the story that either, let's just call them students, are currently going through, or to your point, unemployed individuals. If I'm now unemployed, how do I make a pivot? Is that pivot even in tech? And I think a lot of people are having that harsh reality of, if all of these people have been laid off, or if I'm a contractor and there's just nobody hiring me, um, what do I do now? And when you look at the competition because of so much unemployment, it's like, how do I stand out amongst that competition? And there will still be people who, to your point, have to make sacrifices, whether it's getting another degree. I've seen people go to get their MBA or something like that, which is its own beast of a thing, or people who have shifted over to different technologies that are more relevant, or maybe shift over to adjacent industries like cybersecurity, things like that. Um, Almost everybody that I've talked to is embracing AI in some shape or form, whether they like it or not. They're still at least considering it in some capacity. But to kind of pull it back to not only the camps or the meetups or anything that we're doing here, but just in helping each other in general, trying to understand how to meet people where they are is, I think, really important. I brought up with Nikki, who's helping out planning with DrupalCon for next year, that this year is going to be very different than previous years in the sense that if somebody's bothering to go to DrupalCon, you're always going to have people that are trying to find a better job going to DrupalCon. That's a permanent statement. You're always going to have people who are prospecting in general or networking, but the difference this year is acute. You can't deny it. And if the Drupal Association, if the event planners for DrupalCon don't take that into account, and by extension, all of us with our camps and summits and things like that, then we're ignoring the most obvious thing, that is, you're right, it's soul crushing, it's depressing. Looking for a job is one of the worst experiences that many of us will ever have, especially if you're unemployed, especially if you need to pay your bills. Um, so I couldn't agree more. I think we need to maintain that sensitivity as a part of our conversation, because it's reality. It's where we are, and I keep telling myself this because this is the optimist in me. Because otherwise, if I don't think optimistically, I fall into deep depression, and that's really like debilitating. That no matter what, websites must exist in some shape or form, or software must exist in some shape or form. What is that changing to? And I don't subscribe to the belief that AI is going to take everybody's jobs. I simply, and it's not denial. I just don't think that that's so. That's a gross oversimplification. Does it play a role? Sure, it plays a role. But anybody that's seen it hallucinate more than a calculator spitting out boobs, it's I think really important to understand um, how to read the markets and how to understand your role in that. So, for example, I moved to Canada, and I see that Canada is having a major shift in trade and economics. So that to me is me reading my tea leaves and saying, okay, so what needs a website? Let's just start with the thing that's familiar in my career. So you're going to have a lot of mining and logging. You're going to have a lot of just general resources that will need to communicate, especially multilingual, not just English, French, with other countries that are trade partners. So that's instantly there. Meanwhile, healthcare, government, and education are just plummeting. Not just in the United States, especially the United States, but even in Canada, those industries, those verticals, if you will, from the agency parlance, those are plummeting. So I think it's important if we are going to not just talk amongst ourselves in these meetups, but really try to maybe have sessions that are about career coaching and get a little bit more organized and say, this isn't just general advice that I would have given you 10 years ago about career coaching. This is advice that applies right now with the current technology and the current job market that I can see. I'm not going to give you the answer that will apply to your personal situation, but these are things that you need to think about to maybe just nudge in the right direction. So I'll end that with an example. I hired a business advisor who really did a good job just exploring what I was trying to accomplish earlier this year, and he served his purpose. And one of the best pieces of advice that he gave me was like, it's about being budgeted with your time. So one of the best pieces of advice that he helped me with was focus on the things that are going to have the greatest impact to your success, which is, you can cold application all day. And I already know cold applications are such a waste of time. If you're competing with another 100 people, your chances, you divided by the applicants, near zero. Instead, you need to get referrals. And the best way to do that is to network. So, and it's the dumbest thing, but having a plan about how to actually network. So it's a numbers game. How many people do you know? How many people do you know well? Probably a few hundred at tops, but those people know a few hundred people. So just through the expansion of that network, you can get in touch with potentially thousands, tens of thousands of people if you just work that network and just meet new people. And through those opportunities, it's not so much about you going to each one of those people and selling them. It's just getting to meet them. It's literally that. And he's like, eventually you'll run into someone who will turn into a one-to-one meeting. Schedule one-to-one meeting each week. That's your limit. If you can do more, great. But set yourself these targets of like, I'm going to reach out to my network, see how people are doing, and try to get to those one-to-one meetings. He's like, if you do that for a few months, it's a numbers game at that point. And that is, I guarantee you, just the act of talking to people is so the opposite of depressing. Like looking on LinkedIn is just my nightmare. The only reason I do it is because you kind of have to, but every time I do it, I'm like, I'm just instantly depressed now. That was a tangent, but
Yeah.
I think it was a little relevant.
It's hard. It's funny trying to give people advice because I know like the way I did things is never going to work for most people.
No,
Which is
no,
like
it's personal.
I like for me, I was like I met my coworkers because I made a Craigslist ad looking for housing. It's just like
And it has to be that intangible sometimes.
yeah, exactly. But I do think that it really speaks to the kind of advice that I like. That I loved your advice, by the way. Like I think that's a really awesome thing to write down. Of you know, just like meet one person face to face every week. That's a great takeaway from this meeting, and something that I should probably work on actually. Um, but yeah, but for me, I feel like the when I think of like the things that have really helped me, it's always been like something's not going right, then like think about what's not going right. Like think about the several like big things that are not going right and pick one that you're going to change and just change it. Because like you need some stability, so keep something stable, whether it's a great thing or even something that's not great but like is okay.
Yeah.
Right? And just like pick something and just totally flip it on its head, because like when you do that, you're going to start breaking your habits, right? Or you're giving yourself an opportunity to break your habits. Like the problem with like stagnancy is that you build bad habits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
True.
And always for me, like anytime that I've made like a big positive leap in my life, and sure, there's always a risk that when you make a big leap, it's not going to go, things aren't going to get better. Yes, but if you don't take those leaps, you're not opening up the opportunity to change things dramatically, which that's I know I've told people this before and they've been like, does it have to be big? And for me, I'm like, absolutely, it has to be a big thing, right? Like it doesn't have to be like the biggest thing ever, but it has to be significant.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think the other thing that I got lost in was every new person I met, I'd say, here's the stuff that I do. And it ended up being a list as long as my arm about all the things I can do. And then meanwhile, they don't walk away understanding what I can do. They instead just know that I can do a lot. And that's it's not even selling. It's just it's almost bragging. So I learned to instead say, what do I love to do? And that changed my focus to something very, very specific, and it made the conversation a little bit easier. And I always say, I can do a whole lot of things, but I love doing information architecture or helping people with content for their website and making that better. And even if it's like, oh, I have a restaurant and I just like to, have a better marketing or have a better website, like I'm not building you a Drupal site, but I can at least help walk you through that sort of stuff. And even if I don't charge somebody for that, it's the fact that I was willing to help them, and then they can make a recommendation to yet another person. Because what the hell else was I doing? Sitting around staring at LinkedIn, filling in job applications for no good reason. Yeah. But I think to reel it back in, you know, whether it's somebody that's unemployed or somebody that's looking for a better job than what they currently have because very valid reasons. Maybe they're working for a company that funds organizations or institutions that they don't agree with. Or it's just a student saying, you know what? I don't even know where to start, but this is something that I would love to do. How do I do it? And you can really suck the air out of their balloon if you don't know how to answer that question. And we do know how to answer that question. And it's those baby steps. It's not a matter of like, here's the formula that will be the one size fits all. But like, if you don't know HTML, if you don't know JavaScript and CSS, if you don't know SQL, there's certain things that you can't do in that ecosystem. So just start with those things, get familiar with it. I remember my wife, she worked in the mortgage industry. She hated it. She wanted to get the hell out of it. This was like right before the 2008 crash, and then even after that. Um, and I said, because I was making good web money back then, I was like, just quit your job. I'll support you. I'll teach you everything I know about the web. And I did. Over the course of 2 years, she did that. And then she started working as a project manager. And then after that, she started doing UX work, which aligned with her degree, oddly enough, because she was a visual communications major. I think giving people hope through stories like that is also really good when it comes to kind of pulling the students in and saying, it's not about a formula, it's not about a prescription. It's just about saying, like, you at least need to understand some fundamentals if you're going to get into this, and then start carving your own path with help from other people. Like, you can't do this by yourself. I love the fact that we have our network here. I tried to build this and succeeded really well, admittedly, when I was in Baltimore. But then I left Baltimore, and it was really hard to like maintain that connection. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that here, and I want other people to feel that same way, like really welcome locally, geographically, time zone. I think you're muted. Yeah,
Uh, yeah, I need to drop off in a couple minutes. It's bedtime
yeah, yeah.
for
No
my
worries.
daughter.
Yeah, it's these late times. No worries. Well, it's good
Yeah,
to see you, Eric.
yeah, for sure.
I got to figure out something fun to do for December just to wrap out the year.
Yeah. Well, I think God, it's already November. That's right. Um,
We already had our Thanksgiving up here. Y'all can have yours
yeah,
now.
yeah.
One idea that I've been kind of mulling over, and I think Keegan, you kind of inspired this a little bit, is if any of our meetup members has a website that they need help with, maybe a whole group of folks just help them with it. And I don't know what that looks like, but that might be fun.
I actually have a client here that I've been recommending that we do that because they're kind of small.
Yeah.
And I just gave them today actually I just gave them an estimate for work that I feel bad about, but it's like that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Um, but I basically think it would be a good candidate for something that could we could do some work on at a meetup together, and some simple things and some complex things that need to be done. And some of those things that a couple nothing's like super complex. The most complex thing that um, I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I imagine it's going to take a decent bit of effort. Is in modern Drupal, there's no way to basically you used to have draggable views, right? And you still do have draggable views, but they don't work with Search API.
Okay. Okay.
And so basically I want to um, I'm trying to, and I have a kind of workaround. I have an issue fork right now in Entity Queue to try to do the same kind of thing, but it's buggy. And you can imagine like some of the issues I'm coming across are like, well, if you have one entity listed somewhere in one place, but then you need it somewhere, and I need to make sure that one item can have two different weights basically, and that all these there's other bugs that I don't understand, and part of it I don't really understand indexing that well. So anyway, that's like the most complex thing, and then there's a laundry list of like things that are simple Drupal configuration things, right? That are like you go in
Yeah.
and change in like a minute. But
Maybe we can I think that's a good idea because you're giving an example that if we're saying we're going to do it at the beginning of December, like it's not urgent issues on people's plates that people are going to tackle those as they need to, but rather here's my kind of like wish list of things that are in my own backlog and I'll get to them when I get to them, but
yeah,
maybe having a team of people chip away at a few things, maybe chip away at a few different things within one meetup might give a little variety. So just one
so
idea.
I'm a little
Yeah.
hesitant about the to dive into the idea that the Search API, the entity queue issue in the
Yeah.
meetup, just because limited time. I don't know how far you could actually get on it in like an hour, say. There's going to be a lot of like orientation, and like it actually is just like the kind of issue that probably is good to sit and look at for a lengthy amount of time. In like even if it's just one day, I don't know that one meetup. That's my biggest hesitation with that issue in particular. But yeah, there's plenty of other things that like could probably be good opportunity for like someone who is trying to learn new things about Drupal configuration, or so.
For sure. Well, I think we can at least field it with the group and maybe have a queue of a few issues that we can try to tackle,
Yeah,
and then just start one at a time. And whatever ones we get to, we get to. At least it's an idea. We can figure out what topics, if any, make
yeah,
sense for a December timeframe, and if people are available for it.
yeah.
I will actually be moving at the beginning of January. We're buying a house.
Yeah,
Um,
that's awesome.
I I'll try to do this meetup. We'll see how it goes. But it's literally the day before we close, so who freaking knows? Yeah, but I am personally committed to this. I really enjoy these things. They give me a little bit of relief and some social experience since we're so remote. But yeah,
I would very much like to to be a regular in this space as well. So
Yeah. I want to make sure that anybody who attends these feels like this space belongs to them. So if there's something you want to see happen in this space, just be vocal. I'm mostly vocal in Slack to try to plan these things. So if you want to chat in there, we can kind of figure that out.
I think I mentioned this to you while we were at the summit, but you
Mhm.
know, I think one of the things that I have been trying to recommend and relevant to what I was just describing, but I've been trying to recommend to the Portland group is, and I haven't just I've mentioned it a couple times, I'll say, but I think it would be nice to have like and somewhere like a organized like here's just like things that would be like whether they're issues that we could work on together, like group just module issues or whatever. Um, if people have things that they want to see fixed, or even if it's just something they want to learn, right? Just like have those as like a list of options of things that of like interests,
Yeah.
that like I don't know that maybe we could spend time like out prior to the meeting, like having like uh like I don't know, like a message where we just put a few of them up and we're like, hey, gauge interest in these things, put your emoji on, like one of these
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that
Uh,
would maybe be something I'm interested in seeing. I don't know how well it would work, but it is something that I always like when I get to come to these things and fix something with people.
for sure. I think that's a great idea.
But it's also nice to just talk about, things like we did today also. So
Yeah, I think maybe we can mix it up a little bit. I mean, it's just once a month.
yeah.
If it gets popular enough, I'm trying to gauge it. So we've done this now for about a year. I'm trying to gauge it based on what attendees want.
Mhm.
The only thing I want is just a space to meet. That's my low watermark.
I think that's
Um,
perfect. Yeah. That's enough for me.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think the other area where I need help, and I mentioned this at the summit too, is just outreach, just getting people aware that these meetups exist, and this is just a space where they can attend. Um, we have it in Luma that can add to calendar. It is something that does offer reminders. Everything that I'm doing, I'm trying to keep free. So that's similar to making it accessible is making it also free. So that way nobody feels burdened, especially anybody helping to organize this. But yeah,
Eric had brought up the idea at the summit also about like I think it was Eric put about putting together a like a event site basically like
yeah,
a
yeah,
Drupal like for Drupal events and I feel like that would be really cool and something to try to basically demo for the Drupal community and like just like to show like what would it look like if we had a centralized space for people to you know put their Drupal events in with an interface that was actually good and
yeah. The main one kind of sucks. I have a project page for this. I
yeah
have individual events that there's that interface is kind of quirky. I want to
yeah
be careful not to reinvent the wheel. So if it's
yeah
a matter of trying to improve what we have or align with any initiatives related to that, maybe that's where we pour the energy. However, there's also things like I know there was COD was a distribution for Drupal eons ago for people. I can't even remember what COD stands for, to be honest. Basically, when people were running camps and things like that, they would put something together using that platform, and it's since evolved to something
there
else.
was the contribution events
Okay,
distribution. I don't know if that's the same thing,
it may be.
but that was something that I was pretty interested in for a little bit. But um, looking at it, it didn't look like there was a lot of engagement on it.
That's the
It was
secret.
yeah, it was just like because I think they were trying to like also make space for like comments and like discussion on the site for like individual events and like I don't know, just getting people to engage on it was tricky, and I'm sure we would run into kind of the same thing, but
Yeah,
I think it's like I feel like the thing that's missing though isn't necessarily like a way for people to, you know, talk about events or organize it. Like it is organization partially, but I think more importantly it's discovery, and I don't think that the Drupal contribution group really lent itself to like event discovery, especially by like locales.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
We'll
Yeah,
see.
I think.
I'm gonna go.
All
I got stuff.
right.
Otherwise, I'm gonna stay here the whole time. I gotta
No worries, no worries.
go.
Take care, Eric.
Great seeing you guys.
You too. Here it is. I think this is the site I was thinking. DrupalContribution.org. Basically a way to like join groups and things. So
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen this website, I
that's the
think.
problem.
Yeah, there's so many of these things, and I think attention thins out the more things there are,
Yeah.
which is why I'm always a little bit hesitant to make yet another thing, unless it's something specific to this group, in which case that's totally fine. But then who pays for the hosting, all those questions. Um,
Yeah, I'm just pointing this out as prior art in that's relevant to some of the stuff that we're talking about, and
yeah,
something
yeah,
that
yeah,
it's not even something that I want to like. I think it could be great. I think it could be really cool, and I don't think it should necessarily be overlooked. It's just like
yeah. Just
it is
another
important to
option.
question like why like what was the problem with this, and like is it still useful?
And there is still groups.drupal.org, which I don't
Yeah,
know if that's again, there's all these things that solved a problem, but got dated and got forgotten
yeah,
or no longer have the same usefulness. And it makes me wonder if like giving those a bit of attention and polish might be the right way to kind of like re-centralize. I don't know, but I think you're bringing up a good point. Like this is how we get people's attention.
yeah. I mean, I think the point that Eric was making, or someone else probably made a better point. It might have been who was it? I don't remember, but someone said something about just like the problem is when you go to Drupal.org, you can't find like where your local Drupal events are anywhere, and it's
Yeah.
just like, why is that so hard?
Yeah, it that's why so many people used meetup.com. And then meetup.com started charging money and it just got really it's like 30 bucks a month. It's unless you have a group that's all like paying their dues, who's paying for that?
Yeah,
The Vancouver group I was going to take over because I wasn't sure if I was going to live here or not. Um, like there was a company that was paying for it that doesn't even use Drupal anymore. They're just still paying for it. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. I don't feel good about that. Somebody told me about Luma. That helps, but more people need to know about even looking for that. So it's a, as we say, discovery issue.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that probably wouldn't fix all our problems, right? But like,
Yeah. But
just
making
like
a project page isn't the same thing. Like nobody's
yeah,
going to look at project pages to find local meetup groups or virtual meetup groups.
yeah. So
Well,
it's
the best I can do is just ask all of the individual regional and local meetup groups, hey, just let people know this exists. I'm not trying to steal your thunder. I'm just trying to share. It's all one community.
no, I think it's great. I think this is great, and I don't think of it that way at all. I don't think anyone would take it that way. Um, it is like I think we're all asking the same question, whether
Yeah.
it's for the in-person meetups or the virtual ones, is like how do we let people know that we exist, and not only that we exist, but that like we are like a great community,
Yeah.
to become part of, like, so that's always hard to communicate, I think, from because you don't know that, you don't learn that until you feel it, until you're part of it, and it's just like, you can check on so many different communities, and it's like, why is someone going to look at Drupal?
Yeah. Yeah, if I wanted to find a local RC car building club, I'm sure I could find that easier than I could find this.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Well, fellas, I think we're getting towards that fatigue and end. Um, any closing remarks that we wanted to cover?
I've said enough.
How about you, Peter?
I think these are all really good concepts. They should be something that should be contemplated on like a little bit more, then it can be reached like a good decision. But I feel like we're getting there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as I always tell people, these meetings are recorded, so I will post them up on YouTube. It is the affordance that we give our community. There are transcripts as a result of the recording. I try to give credit, so I will try to find you on Drupal.org. But to make my life easier, if you can share your Drupal.org username either in the chat or in Slack or in a direct message, any of those ways that basically shortcuts it. And I'll give credit through the credit system that our community does have for attendance, because it is valued. And I think the next one is I have a document. The next meetup is coming up December 3rd. So it's always the first Wednesday, unless there's a holiday that falls exactly on that day, which is exceedingly rare. So that's when we'll do the next one. I'll typically do an announcement in the Slack channel to say, hey, what are we thinking of topics? So we've talked a few about a few of those today, and then send out occasional reminders there. But yeah, thanks for joining, and hope to see you in the next one. And if not, that's totally fine.
Yeah. Really appreciate both of you and everyone that showed up. So that's all I'll say.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Keegan. Take
See
care,
ya.
Peter.
Thanks.